Good morning. Final thought from Philippians 1. Now remember, this last section from verse 12 down through verse 30 has been focused on a passionate life centered around the gospel. He started off talking about his imprisonment and that he's imprisoned for the sake of the gospel, but he knows that it's being utilized to embolden people. He talked about how Christ is preached and proclaimed, and then how Christ is his all-consuming passion, and that passion is a life that is courageous. It's characterized by hope and joy, and with a consuming focus on Christ and mission. And he's talked here in the tail end of chapter 1 about this passion giving birth to unity, where we aren't molecular. We're not out here as mavericks, but we're working together for the sake of the gospel. And that makes the enemy smell destruction. They know their demise isn't far away. Well, why does he tell them to rally around together for the sake of the gospel? Is it just for victory? Well, it's part of it. Is it just to defeat the enemy? That's certainly part of it. Here's something he says, verse 29 and 30. For it has been granted, that little for is a connector, right? This striving together is a clear sign, according to verse 28, of their destruction and of your salvation, that from God, for it has been granted to you for the sake of Christ, that for the sake of Christ you should not only believe in him, but also suffer for his sake. Engaged in the same conflict that you saw I had, and now hear that I still have. He bookends, like an inclusio we call it. He bookends. I'm suffering in prison for the advance of the gospel. You will suffer. Verse 12, I'm suffering for the advance of the gospel. Verse 30, you'll suffer for the advance of the gospel. In between, he teaches them about a passionate life for Christ so that they can come out of the end of that section saying yes to a passionate life in Christ that will help them suffer like the apostle has been suffering. That now, with courage, now with Christ as an all-consuming focus, now with the gospel at the center, now with joy and faith, now unified, linked together, standing against the enemy. They can suffer. They can suffer even corporately. And as they suffer, marginalized, they will know that they're suffering for the gospel, just as their great apostle suffered for the gospel in prison. It all comes full circle. So that's why he wants them to be unified. Because when you're unified, then you're not just on mission together, but you're not alone in suffering. You're not alone in suffering. My brother or sister's suffering becomes my suffering. Your brother or sister's suffering becomes your suffering. And now, in that unity, we find a sweet interdependence that allows us to lean on one another and garner strength in the middle of this great cosmic conflict where we are at war against the evil one, who is always at war against us. But it's never a one-on-one battle. It's always us together. That's what the church is for, in part, to be not just the epicenter of the worship of God, which it is, but it's also this fellowship of the saints where we garner strength to live on mission. May the Lord bless you today.